Hello and welcome back. One of the things that I've been all about this year is not reinventing the wheel. I mean, I'm always all about that, but basically everything and anything that I can repurpose, I am, and I want to keep on doing so. So to start my little repurposing journey this year, I went back and was mining some spots in previous content that I could repurpose. I went back and even listened to some of my former podcast episodes of my other podcast. So for those who are unaware, I used to have a podcast called She Built This. It was primarily a guest interview show with women entrepreneurs and the people in their lives who support them. When I sunsetted that back in 2023 to make full room and bring full life to this, a non-interview podcast, saying that right out of the gate for anyone who's listening for the sole purpose of pitching me to be my next guest. Not that you're listening that far. Anyway, I digress. I sunsetted that back in 2023. And I also put to rest a lot of good content ideas and helpful information. But just because the other podcast is resting does not mean that some of the ideas that I laid out in it and some of the information I shared can't come back and see the light of day. So I went back and I was listening through and I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed at the rambly, unclear way in which I tried to get to the heart of a lot of topics. And in most cases, honestly, I wildly failed. I did get feedback from somebody once about this show, that I do that in this intro here. And to him, I say, thank you, kind sir, for the unsolicited advice, but I'm telling a story. I'm telling a story here to lead into the topic of the day. Anyway, again, I digress. As I'm talking about being all over the place, I am legit all over the place. It was in my being all over the place in those episodes that sparked a lot of thoughts for me. And I was like, oh, those are some really good ideas, solid topics that I want to come back and share with you. And in watching myself sort of not have the clarity around the ideas, I'm even repurposing the failure of my repurposing journey, I guess. So it's very meta. I've realized that one of the key things in building trust, expertise, and credibility, and also helping people understand what you are trying to say is clarity. We hear the word all the time, and it cannot be understated that when it comes to our businesses, forget content, forget cash, forget all the other stuff that they say is king, clarity is king. And also, in the words of Brene Brown, clarity is kind. So today we're going to get into what clarity even means, because like I said, we hear the word all the time, but what does it really mean in our messaging, in our business, in our communication? And I'm going to show you how establishing a solid and clear foundation helps to build incredible trust for your community, collaborators, and clients. We're going to get into what clarity is and also what it isn't. And then we're going to talk about a few important keys to clarity in your communication and a few subtle ways to increase trust when showing up in your marketing, both online and off. Welcome to Content with Character, the weekly podcast that'll give you the momentum you need to create content with more ease, clarity, and laughter. I'm your host, content copywriter Emily Aborn, and I'm all about unconventional marketing approaches. I believe in your big ideas, and I'm excited to help you share them in a way that's distinctly you. All right, I thought we could begin our conversation with talking about what clarity is not, because just like I said, it's a big buzzword, but I think it's important to talk about what it is not. So I came up with 9 things that clarity is not. It is not asking every single person in your life what they think you should do. Actually, you can almost guarantee yourself the opposite of clarity when you do that. You're going to get 12 different potential directions, 12 different opinions, but no clarity. Clarity is also not hiring an expert to help you find clarity and then completely dismissing what they recommend. I've been there. I've paid good money to ignore good advice, and I see people, unfortunately, do it all the time. Clarity is not simply more strategy to add to your collection. I think I need to do a whole episode on this, honestly. But so often people, I think that they think they need more strategy, and we need to actually unpack that word even a little bit further and figure out what the goal of the strategy is that you're looking for. But in my opinion, strategy without clarity It's like a GPS with no destination. Clarity is also not another freebie, another worksheet, another download, another reflection, another webinar course. Fill in the blank with your own shiny object of choice. It typically does not come with more input, but actually instead reducing and simplifying, aka better filters, slower pacing, quiet reflection, being with yourself, having an idea but not acting on it right away. Those are the kind of things that you can do while you're working to gain clarity. Clarity is not copying somebody else or dulling down who you are. You can get inspired by other people for sure, but don't expect clarity to come from somebody else's brand voice or brand colors or ChatGPT. Clarity is not just being perfectly organized or color coding your Google Drive folders. Ask me how I know. That's usually just procrastination or the obsessive affliction that I have. Take your break. Clarity is not about being perfect or finding the one true solution. Brands evolve, voices evolve. Clarity evolves as you grow. It's not like the one-stop solution. It changes all the time. New clarity is found. Former clarity becomes irrelevant. Clarity is also not saying absolutely everything. Instead, it's about selecting carefully the right things, the right words to say and not to say. And lastly, clarity usually doesn't come in the form of vague, overused buzzwords. It doesn't come like a fairy and just tap you on the head, boop. More often than not, it's not just winging it and hoping for the best, though that might be temporarily your MO while you're establishing the clarity. Clarity is something you really do need to nurture and cultivate and bring to life from within. And once you get it, once you've established it, like I said, it does evolve and change, but it is a ripple effect. So being clear on the inside, it helps to spread our message outwardly in bigger, more impactful, memorable ways. It also builds trust, confidence, expertise, and credibility. It's a wonderful thing. And it also feels different for every single person. So I think that's my first actual reflection question for you today is, was there a time that you felt like you had really experienced some clarity? And how did that feel for you? What was it like for you to experience clarity? Was it light and airy? Was it a grounded feeling? Was it a very exuberant and joyful feeling? Or maybe it was more solemn and reserved and like this inner determination, you know? So think about that for yourself. What does clarity feel like for you? Because it feels different for every single person. For me, I know a lot of what it's not. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what it is. I know that it is not confusion, but I know that it is excitement and joy. And for me, usually a lightness and an ease. So like I said, still in the middle, I'm actually right now in the middle of figuring a lot of things out in my business and doing some clarity seeking myself. But what I am clear on, and what I feel really solid and good in, is my values. I'm clear on who I am as a small business copywriter. I'm clear on the personalities and the motivations of the clients I want to work with. I'm clear on the messages I want to bring forth in this podcast and how I want to inspire you. And I'm clear that after I finish recording this, I will be going on a nature walk to explore with my husband and dog, because they are two of the things in life I am very clear on and very head over heels with. So think about what clarity is for you. There are probably areas like you may feel sometimes like you just have no clarity, but there's probably some areas in your life where you have it. And then there may be just some things that you need to refine and figure it out, which can often take time. Okay, dissertation on what clarity is and isn't over. Let's get into clarity in our communication and as a trust builder. So we're going to start with clarity in communication. As I shared with you, I used to be very bad at delivering those ideas on the She Built This podcast in a way that was clear. And part of the issue for me back then was that I lacked structure. So I know I said that organization itself is not clarity, and it's not, but being organized can help you foster clarity. And often some of that comes with a structure in how you organize information on your podcast, on your website, on your social media, on your speaking engagements, on your newsletter. The list goes on and on. Structure is my number one key for clarity in communication. Now, notice, I am not saying formulaic. I am not saying robotic. I am saying structure. So for example, now with my podcast episodes, I create a outline for each and every single episode. It's a very in-depth, robust outline, which helps me to not go off on rabbit hole after rabbit hole. Of course, I still go on some. You heard that at the beginning of the episode. I still add my own personality. It's not, as ChatGPT loves to say, quote unquote, no fluff. Now, I for sure add some fluff, but my structure, having it in place, helps me be clear on what I'm sharing, and you can be clear on what you're going to get, what you can expect going in. And I also kind of recap it a little bit at the end, making sure you got what you thought you would. So in the show notes today, I'm going to give you a few episodes as I recommend as we go through this, that are like buddies to this one. So one of them that works really well to lay the foundation of a good structure is called 4 Structures to Give a Whirl. And I really talk about the different ways you can structure podcast episodes, portfolio and project pages, presentations, all of that stuff. So one that I really love that keeps me tethered is to use examples and stories or analogies, but then also recapping what I was going to tell you, also letting you know what I'm going to tell you. So I really love being able to kind of give you 3 different touches with each and every idea. There's a way to say it where it's like, say it 3 times in 3 different ways using 3 different learning styles or applications. It's not always easy to wrap my head around like actually doing it that way, but having a structure in place is really, really helpful. Another way to help you gain structure yourself is actually like listen back. You do have to do, clarity. Like I said, it takes a little work. So listen back to your interviews or your podcast episodes, whether they're solo or guest. Watch your lives, and you're going to watch yourself where you are lacking structure or where you kind of lose the threads of clarity. And I just think we can learn so much about reflecting on our past content in working to get better at what we're doing. When I help podcast guests with their podcast bundles, I really work with them to show them how we can get more clear when they show up in their guest interviews with like, here's an organized structure that is going to give you lots of value for the listeners, lots of value for the host, and you're going to end up being the guest that hosts want to keep inviting back for more and more and more interviews. I lay out structure in my client meetings too, and my kickoff calls. Like I kind of tell them what's going to happen, and then at the end we review and make sure that we covered all of the things that we talked about, check in with extra questions, things like that. Structure brings this relaxation and a sense of ease so that people don't have to wonder what is coming next. And if they did miss or forget something, they're able to kind of like ask you a question about it or go back and check in on that thing that they missed. So it is truly a good trust builder, but also a important like way to concrete the message that you're sharing. The second key to clarity in communication is repetition. Repetition, repetition, repetition. I did an episode called Repetition versus Cohesion, and I'll link that in the show notes too. But it's all about why I encourage you to repeat yourself more, because repetition is not annoying. I like to think of it as cohesion. It is creating a cohesive, interwoven, strong message, and it helps to promote clarity. It is not repeating yourself. It's saying it for those who haven't heard it yet, or for those who weren't ready to hear it yet, or saying it in a different way so that people can understand it more clearly. And it really is consistency at its finest. So I encourage you to repeat your message, repeat the crux of your message over and over and over again. If you feel like you're repeating yourself, I challenge you to try something this week. Take one piece of content and say it in 3 different ways, and say it 3 times and use 3 different formats. It's kind of a fun way to see, I actually am not repeating myself. I'm repurposing. I'm creating cohesion. I'm bringing the same message, new life, over and over and over again. Number 3, key to finding clarity in communication is to remove the noise. You know how when you're driving on the road and like you need to focus on where you're going, or it's just a stressful situation, you have to like turn down the music or whatever's playing. Maybe that's just me. turn down the radio. Turn down the distractions. Declutter your speech, the content, the writing, the urge to say, but wait, there's more. I am going to do an episode on how I reduce distractions throughout my workday or in my content planning. Kind of like my take on that recent shiny object episode I did back in April. But I really do believe that removing the distractions from our communication, removing the noise, is such a gift in clarity. I'm going to include another link in the show notes that is on removing distractions in your actual content. And if you are local to New England, I'll be speaking on Saturday, June 14th in Westford, Massachusetts for the New England Podcasters Group, all about turning down the noise of distraction for speakers and podcasters. So for an example, I'll use a simple email. Sometimes when I'm needing to give a response or react to somebody via email, I start by brain dumping everything that I want to say back to them, and it will be very long. And then I do one of two things, depending on how quickly they need a response to me. I walk away from it and come back in an hour or two, and I cut a lot of what I said, and I revise it, and then I send it. Or I sleep on it and then I do the same thing, cut, revise, and then send it. But I think a lot of what can end up distracting us and also lead to like confusion or unclear messaging or responses, it's just like this urgency and like this noise and more. So when urgency takes over, when too much clutter takes over, clarity is almost always what is sacrificed. Clear is kind, Brene Brown says, and that's because clear has taken a minute to think through what they're saying and consider the other person on the other side, make sure that their message is coming across in the best way possible. And a lot of times that means we have to cut things. Okay, fourth and final key to clarity and communication. It's a bit of a no-brainer. It's something I say all the time. Having intentionality with your language. As a small business copywriter, I believe that words are extremely powerful. Now, some people don't agree. They don't see the copy on their websites as anything more than just like some fancy words. And I think that they think I'm over here like writing with my quill pen like Charlotte Bronte or something. Not an entirely inaccurate description, but it's a lot more than just words that we're crafting over here. It is all about like what those words, how we want those words to come across to the person on the other side. It's about setting an intention in the words that we're choosing. Feelings, imagery, creating connection. Words are an invitation for transformation. They're very, very powerful. And so I would encourage you to use them as well as you possibly can, and to use them intentionally. Think of the words in your business as like little magical money makers. They also can shape opinions or provide people with insight and information. They can change people's lives. They can make people feel a certain way around you or about what you're sharing or about how you help. I even think right now about all of the rhetoric and journalism in the news, and I use rhetoric intentionally. It cannot be understated how words are being used to actually shape narratives, to shape communities, to shape opinions, causes. Words shape entire worlds, and not for nothing, we all have a role to play in that. You can help shape words in the way that you creatively and intentionally decide to use them. So briefly, what I mean by using intentional language, I guess just to keep it simple, is saying what you mean, meaning what you say, saying it simply, clearly, conversationally, genuinely, practicing what you teach, walking your walk, and being ethical with the wording choices that you use. So when you're thinking about your messaging on the whole, that looks like crafting it with intention and purpose and care. All right, now we're going to talk about how clarity can build trust. For me, trust is a huge thing, like probably one of the biggest, both personally and professionally, person and a business owner. I'm constantly on the lookout, especially in today's day and age, for signs that something might not be what I think it is or might not be trustworthy. I've given lots of money to people who have broken my trust. I've listened to lots of people that I probably should not have trusted. I've told people things that I probably should have not trusted them with. And worst of all, I have not always allowed myself to trust myself. So while I do not know all of the keys to trust, I can share with you that I do know it starts on the inside. And here's another reflection I would encourage for you. Am I a person to be trusted? Can clients, friends, family members, my spouse, my children trust me? Are my intentions good? Do I trust me? This could look different depending on the context, but chances are high that if you're listening to a podcast called Content with Character, you're all about building a business full of heart and soul and passion. And you probably know your stuff. So you've probably got at least 3 of those trust boxes checked already. And like I said, it starts from the inside out. It starts from trusting yourself and also knowing that you are a person who can be trusted. So it's one thing to know that you're trustworthy, but it's also an entirely other thing to share how trustworthy you are, right? Like you can't just show up and be like, trust me, trust me, trust me. Because people are like, something's off here. And they're inclined, perhaps in some cases, to do the exact opposite. So I don't want them, wondering why this feels untrustworthy and shisty because you're blasting that it feels that it should be trustworthy. Trust is like a little bit more of a subtle, quiet, consistent build. It's like a behind the scenes kind of thing. So here's some ways to build that foundation of trust without screaming it in their faces. And I have 3 of these for you. So number 1 is consistency and reciprocity. I know those are kind of like big words. I'm going to add another one for you. Consistency is not to be confused with frequency. So what I mean is, when I say consistency, I'm not talking about showing up every day. I'm not talking about showing up more. I'm talking about showing up when you say you will and doing so regularly and dependably. I did an entire episode on consistency. I'm sure you'll be surprised by that I'm going to be linking it in the show notes. But I do believe that consistency builds trust because you're doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. When you're impeccable with your word, as Paulo Coelho, author of The 4 Agreements, says, when you're impeccable with your word, I have another episode on that. I'll link that in the show notes too. When you're impeccable with your word, following through, replying, delivering things on deadline, and actually being a person that somebody else can trust, it unsurprisingly builds trust. Number 2, this is kind of a funny one. It is showing your face and your hands and your personality. I recently saw a reel. I'm not going to share the creator because I don't know how I feel about it, but it was sent to me by my all-time favorite collaborator, Barb Davids of the Small Business Sweet Spot podcast. And it was all about different ways to build trust as a content creator. And one of them was showing your face as being a trust builder. So specifically, the woman was saying, on social content and in reels and in videos and on your website. Now, the funny part to me about this was that the reel did not show her full face. It was just like the side of her face. And so I was like, that's funny. But I agree. Showing your face is really important. Trust me. Well, I don't like showing mine. And I'm trying to get better at that. But I also think equally as important, showing your personality is up there too for building trust. Like, who are you really? And I don't want you to be pretending that you're somebody other than you. You don't need to be somebody that you're not. People trust people. People trust real people. So be a person. Don't be a chatbot. On the same vein is another funny reminder, but it's to show your hands. And I know you're like, what on earth do my hands have to do with people trusting me? But listen, people make a lot of these trust assessments based on our body language. So when you're doing videos or you're sharing a headshot or you're on a podcast as a guest, I would encourage you to try to show your hands to the camera in natural ways. Now, the way I learned about this, and I kind of went down the rabbit hole on the different ways we can actually use our hands as trust builders, but the way I first learned about this is through a creator called Vanessa Von Edwards. I follow her on Instagram. I've listened to a couple podcasts on her. I'll include her account in the show notes. She offers some really great tips on building warmth and also competency by building trust in different ways with your body language, including your hands. Face, hands, personality. It's the adult version of head, shoulders, knees, and toes when it comes to building trust. And then number 3 in building trust through clarity is presenting accurate information and maintaining integrity whenever possible. So I'm going to give you a really tiny example. When I see somebody create a social post and they say they've plugged a prompt into ChatGPT, B as in boy, versus ChatGPT, P as in potato, I have to say, and this is so petty and small, but I lose a little bit of trust in whatever they say next because they've literally called the whole tool by the wrong name. Now, I did look up and I was like, is there actually a chat GBT? There is not. There is none. So they're calling the tool by the wrong name, and then they're giving you an example of how to use this tool that they've supposedly like spent all this time honing. And so I'm not saying this is not like just like a typo. I wouldn't apply this to typos. People make those all the time. This happens to the best of us, even Oprah. But incorrect information, when it's something like you're actually giving an example of how to use something, that's another thing. So of course, we're all going to be prone to making mistakes and giving wrong information or incorrect information. It's happened to me so many times. I still do it to this day. Whenever possible, I try to go back and correct what I said. For example, I might say, in the last episode, I said this, but it's really this, or I'll text the person and say, the other day when I told you this, I really didn't mean to say it like that. I meant blah, 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 blah. Or I researched, I found better information. Anyway, the point is, don't give out unresearched information. Present with accuracy whenever possible. And I think one really important and easy way to do this is just stay in your lane, stay in your own genius zone, and don't try to tackle things that are outside of your scope. The other is to know what you know and not share things that you don't know if you need to get more information to find the answer. You can simply say, I don't know, but I'll look for an answer for you. Or I don't know, but I'll find somebody who can help you. I think that accuracy, honesty, and integrity, presenting truthful information, accurate information, all of those things help to build trust. And not for nothing, it applies to how you talk about your own expertise too. Like, be truthful. So avoid exaggerating, which I see all the time, but equally as bad, minimizing your expertise, which I also see all the time. So be real and honest about what you can and can't do. And remember that those small details of accuracy and honesty, those small details actually do matter, and they can help build a real sense of safety and trust for people. Plus, they nod to your own expertise and your own professionalism. So that's a wrap. I know that was a lot. We have under our belts now 4 ways to use communication to build clarity. And that is structure, repetition, removing the noise and the distractions, and using your words intentionally. Remember, words shape worlds. We also have 3 keys to building trust through clarity: consistency and reciprocity, showing your face, hands, and personality, head, shoulders, knees, and toes of trust, being accurate and communicating with integrity, presenting all those pieces of information that you actually do know and not saying the rest. And to take it all home, people are going to trust you more when you are consistent. People trust you more when you communicate clearly and simply. Okay, now it's time to hold the fluff, right? And people also trust you more when you are committed to choosing your words with intention and purpose and owning up to your mistakes when you make them, because we all do. So remember that clarity really it begins inside of us, and then it can be a real bridge to confident communication. And when we have confident and intentional communication, we then start to build and grow trust. So on that note, I'm going to leave you with these marketing microdoses. And know that I'm doing these right alongside you this week because I'm working on clarity of my own. So number 1 is ask yourself where you want to find a little bit more clarity and start really giving some space and some time in that area. So remove the things that are cluttering it, remove all the noise, all the voices, do some journaling, however you like to find clarity. Really give yourself some time to focus on finding answers in that area. Then number 2, go shop the show notes for your next Content with Character episode to listen to, because I surely gave you a whole lot. You could take this topic and really, really run with it. And of course, never hesitate to message me, email me, leave me a voicemail, leave me a review, and connect with me wherever you spend time online. On that note, I will delightfully chat with you next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Content with Character. If you loved the episode, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast, rate, review, and share it with someone else you know it could help. For more content and visibility tips, visit my blog at emilyaborn.com and be sure to connect with me on Instagram at emilyaborn. I'd love to hear how this inspired you to take action.